Hello. Welcome to Campfire Talks, brought to you by the Camp Network team, which is part of Camp Support. I'm your host, Fox. We will be introducing a resource to help your camp improve its sustainability and highlight some easy to achieve green goals. The goal of this Campfire Talk is to show you this helpful resource and get excited about how you can make this year's burn more sustainable. That said, please share in the chat where you're calling in from, the name of your camp, and your camp size. We have some guidelines for our meeting today. Please mute your mic if not speaking. Be respectful in your participation. Share the air. We'll be more efficient that way. Be present. We're all here to learn together. Let's be gracious with our attention. Speak from experience, and feel free to ask questions or share your experiences using the chat feature. For your questions, a moderator will queue up the questions and present them to the panelists and group your responses. There will be some resources and the Campfire Talks feedback form showing up at the end of the chat. So keep your eye out for those and let's get started. Our primary presenter is Papercut, who has revamped the Green Theme Camp community website with lots of easy to find resources. Papercut has been burning since 2018 and has had several roles ranging from theme camp organizer for 2 separate camps, DPW fuel admin, and BRC greenhouse gas emissions auditor, and currently theme camp sustainability specialist. In his current role, he visited over 50 theme camps, learning the best practices as well as the pain points, and revamped the theme camp community website, which is the resources he's going to present today. Papercut?
Hey everyone. Yeah, my name is Papercut. And besides some of those titles that Fox just shared about me, I'm also, the current theme camp I'm a part of is my dad's house. Many of you maybe are familiar with it, or the High Line, the Slack Line. And yeah, I'm really excited to share this with you guys. And I think before I jump in, I just want to take a moment to thank Placement for creating this theme camp sustainability specialist role, for Puppy and Fox for organizing this talk. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to work with y'all, and also to all the other speakers who are going to be joining us today for carving out time to share stuff that you're doing in the realm of sustainability. I also, just before jumping in, want to thank the Green Theme Camp community predecessors. Specifically, I wanted to call out Scott Williams, who is the webmaster who really built the Green Theme Camp community website. I really am just inheriting that resource and cleaning it up a little bit. So I don't want anyone to have the impression during this talk that this was all my work. I'm building on the backs of giants here. And so Scott really was a huge part in that. And he's also one of the founders, I believe, of RAT, Renewables for Artists Team. So another organization that y'all should check out. I'm pretty sure they'll have some talks during the renewable or during the theme camp symposium. So just wanted to shout them out too, as well as all the quite a few people who I can see here from the Blast/Green Theme Camp community leadership. This resource was compiled in large part due to the contributions of those people. And really all I did was find all these resources from around all these preceding Campfire Talks, Theme Camp Sustainability, or Green Theme Camp Symposium, the Theme Camp Symposium, Reddit, just all over the place. So I just really want to be super gracious of everyone who's contributed to this, because I'm really just presenting the final product, but in no means did I come up with all this information. So I'm just going to share in the chat in case it hasn't already been shared yet, since I'm not looking at it. It looks like it actually, now I'm seeing it, has been shared already. So that is the link to the website. I encourage everyone to go there and be able to open it up and browse in their own time. So that way, you can kind of familiarize yourself with the website. If you look at the top bar, the first thing, and I guess I'll share my screen at this point. So this is the homepage of the Green Theme Camp community website. What I'll primarily be talking about today is what you're going to see here in the toolkit dropdown. So that's what I meant by going and just browsing around a little bit. Before we jump in, I did want to address that. I know that this talk had been branded as the Thrival Guide, the revamped Thrival Guide. And the reason it's not labeled as such here is just because, just like I said earlier, there are so many people who contributed to sustainability work on the participant side of things that predated me, including Satya and some people who worked on what the Thrival Guide, and we just didn't really sync up with them on really being able to use that term. So just wanted to honor that the things that they had worked on with that were slightly different than what I worked on. So we're just calling it the toolkit, but I just wanted to address that in case people have questions about, hey, I thought this was going to be the Thrival Guide. So really, this is just a toolkit of best practices that we're going to share with you all. And so let's just jump into it. But before I jump into the toolkit specifically, just familiarizing yourself with some other stuff on the website. There's, get started page, which has a lot of links about how to get more involved in things and how to navigate the website. Other opportunities, there's the blast page, which is all about the burners and leading a sustainable theme camps, which is a LEED certification program that we've got to kind of encourage more theme camps to go green and honor and recognize camps that are doing that. We've got the green corridor, which is a specific part of the city where green theme camps are, congregated together. Kat and was the founder of the Playa-wide compost, and you can learn more about that here. And she'll be talking, I believe, later in the chat. And then, we also have some information on sustainable regional events, or like how sustainability is being done there. So just wanted to call out those other things here, not just what I'm going to be talking about today. So I encourage you to explore later on. So yes, this is the homepage of the toolkit. Here you can see at a single glance just all of the different best practices as it relates to sustainability, kind of compartmentalized into these six different resource areas, which you can also see in the drop-down menu. So I encourage you to look at all of these on your own, but you can quickly, if you wanted to, click on these and it'll bring you to that exact section in the resource guide. So if you were interested in maybe just printing this out or sharing this with your camp sustainability lead, this is like the overview page where you can really see it all at a very high level. But each of these pages are organized a little differently. But for the most part, they have kind of the same layout. And that's kind of what I just wanted to familiarize everyone with right here. And so, each of these pages is going to kind of start with this header and a little blurb, just explaining what you're about to read about, quick links that bring you down to the different sections, quick little jumps. And then there's also these badges. These badges are meant to kind of guide people to where they need to start if this is they're just starting on this area of sustainability, or there's beginner badges, intermediate, and advanced. And by no means are those like definitive. Obviously, depending on how complex the things that you're doing, they can be as easy or as difficult as possible. But for an average burner, we just felt like these were pretty accurate kind of levels of difficulty or approachability. And so just don't be scared if you see something as an intermediate or advanced. It just means that maybe there's some some earlier steps that you could get to that would move you along in the direction of sustainability, and you don't need to jump necessarily. You shouldn't necessarily jump steps, but it's fine to do so as well. So this is just the food one. Obviously, I'm not going to go into every single page and look at each resource, but I just kind of, again, want to get people familiarized with what the layout is. And so the layout is essentially just a bunch of photos showing, different examples of these things. You can toggle through them at different speeds. So there's lots of different examples that you can look at. We always try to, highlight the photographer who took those photos when we were able to find them. And then also within this, there are links out to different pages, right? So if there's any resource that I was able to find, rather than just kind of throwing it all into one page, I tried to synthesize it into a couple different, small short sentences so you can get the gist of it. And if there's more stuff that you need to read on, so this is, goes to the survival guide. This breaks out to a moisture meter, like PDF file. Sometimes there's videos that show you things. Other times we're going offline to other, websites. This is Playa Labs. So again, this is just like an exhaustive resource that just is anything I was able to find on the topic. And I do want to acknowledge, though, that while I say exhaustive, it is definitely not a static resource. This is something that we plan to keep adding to. We hope that it keeps evolving, and that people can keep adding and sharing their own projects, because this is just the start. We just wanted, before, this website was just kind of assemblage of different resources, but a lot of videos that you would have had to watch to have gleaned maybe a couple takeaways from. And so I spent a lot of time watching those and kind of breaking those down and trying to get it into really short little blurbs, so that way people can more quickly access what they need to and go deeper without having to do as much research as I had to do to kind of find all of these different things. So yeah, this is kind of that page, and just touching on the idea of sharing your ideas, right? We have a button up here that if you were to click on this, it would open up your email client and send us an email to greenthemecamps@burningman.org. And that's being monitored by the Green Theme Camp community leadership. And so we would be able to check out your project, help formulate it and add it to the website, maybe amend an existing link. And then we also have a get involved button that brings you to the Green Theme Camp community link tree, which has a bunch of other links, such as how to get, join our Facebook group, how to apply to Blast, to apply a wide compost. I mean, so many things. I encourage you to check it out on your own. And so, yeah, we really hope that this is just the beginning of people checking out these resources, being able to more easily find them, share what they're working on. I wanted to call out something specifically that I think we're missing, which is a lot of like specs and how-tos. Any sort of documentation that's really showing how this works on Playa. There's a lot of it, but it's definitely, few and far between. And we would really like to get more specifics in here, so that way we are able to, we're able to keep growing this. And, by the time the theme camp symposium happens, I also just want to do a kind of hint at the creation of the Green Theme Camp community Discord channel, or server. So between now and the theme camp symposium, we're going to be launching that Discord server, where we're going to be able to have conversations also organized in these different areas, so people can come and ask questions and share resources and kind of have a conversation. So this is less of a, again, authoritative resource, but more of a community effort where we're sharing and talking and supporting one another in the development of this. And so just know, but between now and then, there will be yet another place that you can turn to get answers on all of this stuff and share information. I guess I'll just go to one other page just to kind of, again, show you some of the different things that are going on here. And yeah, I just kind of want to, again, calling out certain teams like the Renewable for Artists teams as well. So just check it out. There's lots of good stuff in here. This took maybe, I don't know, several days worth of work to be able to find all these resources and kind of synthesize it so it wasn't as daunting. And I really hope that this can be a starting point for you and your sustainability journey, or if you're already a veteran in this, like just helping you come up with new ideas and ways that you can continue to push, because we really have to take it upon ourselves as theme camps to be able to make Black Rock City sustainable, or as sustainable as possible, in order to support the Burning Man project in their goal of carbon neutrality by 2030. So I really hope that this has been helpful and just showing you how it's all laid out. And I hope that people are able to kind of explore this on their own time and share their ideas, so that way we can continue growing this and keep this sustainability effort moving forward. Cool. That's what I got for y'all.
Brady Cat, did you have any questions from the chat?
We had just a few. I think a lot of people sound like they have questions about water and water delivery. If you want to maybe share where that might be on the website where they can find that info. And the last question is there a way to learn which camps are in the green corridor, or which camps have been in the green corridor in the past?
Yes. So I'll start with that question first. So if you were to navigate over to I guess I can share my screen again. if you were to go over to the Green Corridor page, it has the 2024 camps. And I'm working on getting the 2024 map as well, which shows not just the Green Corridor camps, but also the Blast camps. So you're welcome to check that out. We're going to try to keep adding to that each year. So that way there's kind of historical growth, but I am happy to share that last year we went from having far fewer camps. I believe we grew by over 30% from last year for the Blast program. So there's a lot of interest in that. And this year we were also able to get that added to the statement of interest, or the SOI, or if it's not in there, then it's in the place camped questionnaire. And so there's an opt-in for Blast, and to follow us to have us follow up with you and send you the application for Blast. So without adding too many more questions to the questionnaire, we do have an opt-in, so it's very easy to find and join in on this effort. And our goal is to surpass 100 camps this year. So that's where you can find that information. And what was the second question about water?
If you
Bratty
make,
Cat?
hi, sorry, looking for my mute button. If you wanted to share on the website where they, I actually think there are some links posted. I can reshare about gray water. So we just had a lot of questions about water.
Yeah, so I believe there is I'll share my screen again, just so everyone doesn't have to kind of follow me along verbally. But in terms of where to get water, I believe we have this page here, which leads to this resource from Burning Man, which shows where the people can pick up water in Reno, Sparks, and Gerlach. And so that's here. You can see all of these things. It shows you how to open it on a map in Google. So you can get water there. This is different. I think this is if you're trying to fill water prior to arriving to Playa, which again, one of the more sustainable things you can do is fill your water closer to the event. So you're not hauling water weight and reducing your car's efficiency. So that's a very simple, low-hanging fruit that I think a lot of people don't do. And then there's also the centrally planning water for your theme camp, which really works if you're a camp of a big enough size. But there's also, we wanted to call out the hubs program, where people can, especially smaller camps, can pool together resources. So you could find a neighbor camp that is in your block or was in your block last year and say, hey, do you want to share a water drop, right? And then you can get one of these containers here, right? That is, significantly enough water for your camp. And that's all provided through the OSS program, which you can also find links about here. So I hope that answers the question without having seen what the actual question in the chat was. But there's a lot of good stuff going on here. Also comparatives of how to do, different dishwashing setups and low flow showers and gray water evap. So I really recommend people check out the water stuff. That's actually the big thing my dad's house is going to be working on this year. So this is a really helpful resource for me.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Paper Cut. And Bratty Cat, thank you for the questions. Just a reminder, keep your questions coming in the chat, and we'll have time to ask our speakers at the end of the next discussion. Next, we have Kat Nadell and Lauren Turk here to talk with us about composting. Kat, also Magnolia, loves finding new ways to turn leftovers into something magical. She started the Playa-wide compost program in 2016 and has been elbow deep in compost ever since. She's also an active volunteer with Blast and the Green Theme Camp community, working to support sustainability efforts across the Black Rock City. Her grand vision: all burners have the opportunity to compost their food waste while experiencing the pure joy of contributing to a cleaner, thriving planet, one banana peel at a time. Lauren, also Tiger Lily, is a lover of ancient earth alchemy and is compost and lifelong musician. When she's not supporting the Playa-wide compost program with Kat, she's helping strengthen and scale compost systems in Los Angeles, Kansas City, and the Bay Area, working across sectors, building technology, strategies, and the systems that make waste history. So Kat, go ahead.
Everyone, go ahead, Kat. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you. I was also just answering one of the questions here. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of introduction around waste, and then pass it over to Lauren to talk about the compost program, which is part of waste. And then I'll talk a little bit about food as well. So this, first of all, like 5,000, 10,000 gold stars for this incredible resource guide. Thank you, Jesse, and all of the people who have put so much time and effort and energy into it. There's a lot here, and so there's a lot I'm actually not going to cover about what you can do in terms of reducing waste. But I will touch on kind of the overarching, to me, what the overarching theme is, which is how can we shift the way that we and our campmates are think about what waste actually is, right? Like we think like waste is just like, I can't use this anymore, let me throw it away. And I want to kind of shift our thinking to bring in this idea that like first we have to change our awareness of what we are using, the things that we're using. And so waste can be in any one of these toolkits, right? It could be there could be packaging waste, there could be food waste, there could be like power, waste, fuel, right? Gray water is also waste, poop is waste, right? Building materials can be waste, right? And so, I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but which is why this Green Theme Camp community guide is so wonderful in being able to share, how you can really get started, just like baby steps, right? Like what's one thing, like if this is your first year and you are, an L&T lead or a camp lead, or you're just interested in sustainability and you've never done it before, like just one step at a time, right? And so you could also focus in on one aspect of a time, right? At a time, waste, for example. And one thing that Lauren's going to talk about is collecting your food waste and bringing it over to one of the compost collection sites so that we can recover that material and turn that into delicious, amazing, nutrient-rich soil for our earth rather than throwing it into the landfill. And so the other thing I want us to think about with waste is most of us know and have learned in school the reduce, reuse, recycle, right? With a focus on how can we reduce and how can we reuse. And then this big push just in the last, I don't know, like 20 years or so, like recycle, 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 and only in certain areas, right? Because where I grew up, recycling is not even really a thing. And I want to bring in the other R's, which there are many of, but the three I want to focus on are recover, which is what we do with food waste at the compost program, repair, and I have made a vow to myself last year, and I'm repeating it this year, to not purchase any clothing. And so if a button falls off or a thing tears, I'm going to repair it. And if I can't repair it, maybe then I can recover it or figure out a way to use the material in some other way. And then refuse is one of my favorite ones. It's like refusing of single use items, like, having your camp bring in reusable plates and silverware and cups, right? Rather than throwing away, compostable wares or even paper plates, right? So yes, we can reduce our power demands. Yes, we can reduce our, like by having communal cool spaces. Yes, we can reduce our power demands by using induction stoves. But really the first focus we want to have is awareness. Where are we wasting? What are we wasting? So if you are just on your beginning journey of sustainability, I would encourage you to, just go in with a curiosity mindset this year at Burning Man and ask that question, like what is being wasted? And then once you have gathered that information and that knowledge, you can do something about it, right? Let's see. The other major thing about waste and really about this whole topic of sustainability and regeneration is to find those people in your community who, like me and like Lauren, are really nerdy about like cleaning up and leaving no trace. Like there literally are people out there who get excited about not leaving moop on the ground. And look at the kind of moop I found. Look at this cool sequin. Look, right? Just all, there are people out there. So find those people and enroll them in taking leadership in your camp, and then show them this Green Theme Camp Community Guide and watch your camp transform into a sustainability camp. So those are the two main things. I'm going to pass it over to Lauren, because one of the R's here that's really important to me is recovering. And in a different campfire talk, we'll talk about recovering poop and human waste, right? But today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Plywide Compost Program, which was started in 2016. Lauren, over to you.
Thank you, Kat. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to start by just highlighting why compost is important and why it has a role on Playa. So I'm going to share my screen real fast here and present. Okay. I think this is kind of a fun way of conveying that composting is the GOAT, because composting fertilizes and regenerates soil. When you put compost on soil, that soil can actually absorb more carbon, more water. It holds more nutrients. That mitigates all sorts of risk. It helps curb climate change. It benefits the quality of things that can grow. It benefits the yield of things growing. There's so much benefit to composting, whereas just putting food in landfills, 40% of the food we grow in the United States goes into landfills, and that generates about 20% of America's methane emissions, which is crazy. And methane is more heat trapping and more potent as a heat trapping greenhouse gas than CO2. It has a shorter half-life, meaning it goes away in the atmosphere sooner than CO2, but while it is here, it traps heat up to 80% more potently than CO2. So just by being a person who eats food and composts it instead of putting it into the landfill, it's one of the most radical climate actions that we can choose on a daily basis. So that's why I'm passionate about, well, it's one of the reasons I'm passionate about composting. But what does that have to do with Leave No Trace? What I just told you about 40% of food going to landfill and the methane emissions that correspond to it is the default world. That's what we do in the default world. That's our take, make, waste system in the default world. And Burning Man, to me, among the many things that it means to me and represents to me, one of them is it's a place where we imagine what the world could be like, how it could be different, how we could gather differently, how we could do things differently, how we could create society and be in relationship with each other and things differently, right? And so Leave No Trace is great, but these times may call for going a bit beyond leaving no trace. What if instead of leaving no trace, we actually left a positive trace? What if instead of just reducing our footprint, we created a positive handprint, for example? And so how could composting be that to us? And so this brings us to the amazing program Kat started many years ago, Plywide Compost. I've been lucky to join her in these wonderful efforts. This is us in the middle this past year. And this past year at Burning Man, we had 2 drop-off points and 10,500 people, 10,500 participants on Playa brought their food scraps to us, which is an incredible participation rate. We're super proud of that. And it's just going to keep growing thanks to all of you. So last year we were able to divert 6,000 gallons of organics or food scraps from landfills, and that amounts to avoiding 1.5 metric tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. CO2 equivalent is a formula that includes both CO2 and the methane emissions. It's a combined calculation. That's industry standard. So here's some of our cool participants bringing their their food scraps. And you can see Kat and I are actually standing in a like dumpster. And you can see that it's like not that gross. Why is that? Well, we've got mulch there and we've also got biochar there. And every shift, folks just kind of mix it together. And that makes for a pretty pleasant and stable situation. It's really not that big of a deal. Here are some pics of the compost in process through the provider Full Circle Compost, who is based in Nevada and who we work with. That's who collects the dumpsters and brings them to their facility and turns all the food scraps into soil. And you can see here on the right, like a bunch of coconuts. This it's just kind of good to know that one of the names of the game when it comes to creating compost is having balance. Like everything in nature or for living a healthy life, some modicum of balance is important. So if you have a bunch of coconut things, then they don't break down as well. So it's important that we have actually a lot of participation. We need a lot of people to bring us their food scraps because that promotes more diversity of materials. Like we don't want to just have only banana peels, only orange rinds, or only coconuts. That makes it harder on the back end to actually create compost. For example, this is what it looks like when you attempt to compost the compostable foodware materials. They actually do require to be handled specially so that they need like organics to be in the mix so that they can break down. And this is my cute little appeal to you from a seductive banana to join us. And before I kick it back over to Kat, I just want to give you a preview of what's up and coming. So this year, we're aiming to open a third compost collection site. We work with different camps. Ocean Beach, Laka Laka have been our incredible partners and supporters who collected last year. And we're looking forward to doing it again this year and adding even more. And our goal is to distribute at least 3 different sites across Playa equidistantly, 369 at F, so that it promotes the most widespread and equitable access in proximity to a compost drop-off location. This year, Kat and I also, we sent out a survey to our 217 folks who were involved in camps that were composting and collecting to get feedback, etc. We analyzed it, how we can improve the program. And what we have implemented for this year is something called what we're calling No Food Scrap Left Behind. And in the past, we had a policy that was pretty strict about the moisture level of food scraps coming to us. And there still will be a protocol of drying your food scraps. It's really important. But we realized that we can actually accept more food scraps even with a little bit of moisture because we are adding into the mix mulch and biochar, and because during shifts we can actually open the top of the dumpster to aerate a little bit, which promotes drying. So we're really excited to share that this year it will be easier than ever to bring your food scraps to us because of 2 things. 1, there will be more locations that will be closer to you. And 2, the drying process will be a little bit easier and simpler. So with that, thank you, and over to you, Kat.
Thank you for that, Lauren. You guys, it's like this, if any of you on this call have children or animals and they do a thing that you're really proud of, that's how I feel right now. It's like this project is like my baby. So thank you, Lauren, for such a beautiful and eloquent expression of that. I'm seeing lots of things in the chat. I do want to also just real quick direct us to, there is a Facebook page, Playa-wide composting at Burning Man. I'll throw that in the chat. And that is a great place to collect resources on drawing methods and best practices and, you know, that kind of thing. I also want to say that we may even have 4 collection sites this year, and I'm like 85% sure we're gonna have one at 3, 6, and 9. So I'm very excited to have gotten started early this year and in our process, and I'm really excited about what the year holds. Okay, I'm gonna transition us to food, and then we'll close here shortly. There's lots of things that I could say about food, and the R principles really work here as well, like reducing your waste, doing your food prep prior to coming to Playa, you know, reducing the amount of packaging that you have to open prior to coming to Playa. You know, like your food storage, freezing your food ahead of time, and learning how to insulate your food well. Understanding the types of food that have impact, right? So a lot of camps have gone vegetarian, and for those who are meat eaters, you know, sourcing locally and organic meats, and really finding those places that have best practices. That's my tiny little plug. Again, the Green Theme Camp Community Guide has excellent information, so I don't feel like I need to go through all of that. I would just grab a cup of coffee or maybe 4 or 5 and just like hang out with that web page for a little while. It's really amazing. I will say that I just want to remind us all that, like, if you've ever been to a party, most of the people are hanging out in the kitchen, hanging out around the food, and food has this really magical, beautiful, even compost, like food scraps. It's the same thing when you come to the compost program, you know, and the collection site, like the same energy is there. People are talking and laughing. And so, you know, beyond just how do we keep our food, you know, and the process of bringing food to Playa and off Playa as sustainable and regenerative as possible, I want us to also think about how are we, you know, educating. And education, I think, of any of this sustainability stuff is one of the most important pieces, right? Like educating from a place of, well, what's your relationship to waste or water or food or power or transportation? You know, like what do you get excited about? And similarly with food, we want our food to be a place of communal enjoyment and joy and fun and connection. And so I would even, you know, beyond the sustainability piece, like ask the question to all of you, what is one thing that you could do to make the kitchen or make the space around food a place of connection, a point of connection? And then from there, I wonder, you know, what sort of sustainability practices will fit into that, right? So I just want to offer that as part of food, as being the heart and soul of connection. Check.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat and Lauren. I believe Brady Hat has a couple questions from the chat.
Yeah, I have 2 questions here. Our first question is, do you have any suggestions for containers for camps to keep/gather their compost to drop off? How long is it okay to keep compost in camp before delivering?
I can take that. So there's lots of ways to dry out your food waste and to collect your food waste. One of the easiest things you can do is go to a coffee grinder place and get those burlap sacks and put your food waste in those out on the sun on top of some ground covering so it doesn't, you know, move all over the playa. And the sun does an amazing job of drying out food waste. Depending on how big your camp is and how much food scraps there are, it could take some time. It could take, you know, 2 or 3 days to dry out. And also we're implementing this no food scraps left behind. So, you know, do your best and we're not going to turn you away. And then what was the second part of the question?
Sorry, there we go. The second part of the question, how long is it okay to keep compost in camp before delivery?
Right, yeah, I think that's what I was just speaking to is, yeah, it really depends on how much food waste you have. I wonder if this is, Jesse, maybe you can answer this. There is uh, an best practices for drying food waste, like one pager that, is it on there?
Yeah, it should be on. If you also go to the compost page, there's a one page that shows different compost drying methods. There
Yes.
is also, you can find all of this stuff if you find in either the food or the waste section. There's on both pages stuff to do with compost as well as photos. A lot of people use like kind of like make their own drying racks and then lay those out in the sun, and that seems to be the best way because you get air underneath and from above too, as opposed to just putting it on a tarp where it might pool up with the liquid.
Great.
So don't put it in a 5-gallon bucket. That's not the way to dry it.
Right. Yeah, the 5-gallon buckets are great for when you want to transport. So you could have have a contraption to dry out your food waste, and then put it in a 5-gallon bucket when you're ready to transport it over to us. That makes it a lot easier for transportation. Other questions?
You answered them all in that wonderful response. Thank you.
Amazing. Great, thank you.
Well, thank you again. Next up is Sugar speaking about gray water. Sugar has been burning since 2014. He is the camp and sustainability lead for Ocean Beach, a 30-person camp known for its smoothies and lobster pizza. Ocean Beach has a blast camp for 3 years in a row and part of the Green Corridor for the last 2 years. Sugar, what's new in the division of gray water management?
Thank you. So just before I start, I must say I have a very checkered past with water at Burning Man. First of all, sugar dissolves in water, so that's not great to begin with. But secondly, I remember my first burn as a virgin burner, not knowing anything and never having to deal with like water constraints. I felt no better than to just rinse dishes under running water because I thought I was going to be consuming the least water. Little did I know that that was not the case. And so within a day or 2 days, my RV ran out of water. And then we had a toilet accident where like the next day, the water ran over and basically emptied the tank for the second time in basically 2 days, 2 days in a row. So that was a really bad experience in dealing with water. And so anyway, so over the years, things have gotten better. So I started Ocean Beach. We started to focus heavily on like water management and trying to be the best we possibly can be to deal with water management, meaning like reducing the need for water and also making sure that we can actually treat the water in a way that doesn't mean we have to basically haul everything back out. And so as I think about water management, and I think I don't have any slides. I think the website basically has everything you need to know about water management. But as I think about water management and the amount of effort that you can put in to become more sustainable, I think about this at actually 3 levels. And the first level is super easy. It's really about education and establishing kind of the right type of rules inside your camp. And it's amazing, like, I was like that too as a virgin burner. I had no idea what it meant to be careful with water consumption. Like, because at home, we never have this problem. You open the tap and water comes out. You take a shower for 20 minutes. Nobody has any problem with that, and just the water keeps running. But in the Burning Man constraint, of course, that's not the case. And so establishing the right rules and establishing the right type of education for your campers is kind of step one of becoming more aware of the constraints that you're dealing with and making sure you do a better job at that. And so a couple of examples of that. For instance, showers. Like we at Ocean Beach, we have very strict rules around showers. And so people can take a shower every 2 days. They cannot use more than 1 gallon per shower. And so we established rules. We basically have a low spray head that only produces 1 gallon per minute. And so the rule is the water can only run for 1 minute. And so we teach people on how to take a shower military style. And actually, a minute of running water is actually quite a bit. You don't really need a lot of water to be clean. And so putting that rule in place and putting that education in place really helps constrain the water usage that you have. And the second thing is like cleaning dishes, right? That's another area where a lot of water can get wasted. And so the best practice there, I believe, is to implement this 3-tub system. And you can look on the website and figure out like how to create this 3-tub system. It's super easy to do. And that way you can really minimize So you can really minimize the amount of water that you use and still be super hygienic. What people also do is use the water spray, like rather than like dumping your dirty dishes in water, you basically spray them off and you take paper towel and you clean it that way. And then you use a little bit of water to kind of like go through the process of like soaping it up and then cleaning it. So there's lots of these like very simple things you can do to get started and to really limit the amount of water consumption that you use. And I would say that's kind of step one. And I think if you implement that as a camp, that's already a significant step forward. Then step number 2 is then, okay, can you centralize some services, right? And by centralizing some services, you can actually make it more efficient and you can reduce your carbon footprint. And as Jesse mentioned, one area where you can easily centralize is providing a centralized water supply for your camp. There's OSS suppliers that do a really good job at that. You can rent, we rent a 550 gallon tank that gets dropped off by the OSS supplier, gets filled with water, and then at the end of the week they come pick up the container, take it back to Reno. And so that way you can really limit the amount of transportation and carbon that you create by basically hauling water. So that's one way to do it. The second thing is we also have a rule about eliminating plastic bottles. So we don't accept any plastic bottles in our camp. No single-use kind of water containers, because we have a 550 gallon reservoir, so people can just fill their reusable bottles from our central reservoir. They don't have to bring in single-use kind of containers. And so I think that helps a lot. We also only allow, there's no plastic in our camp. We only allow aluminum as well, so we can actually recycle the aluminum. So that's part of like the second thing, is like providing centralized services and having rules around that. So that I think is level 2. And then I think level 3 is where you start getting into like building stuff. And that's the thing I'm most excited about, because I love building and experimenting with things, and specifically around like the treatment of gray water and the evaporation of gray water. And so the website has significant amount of resources on this topic, on how you build an evapotron, for instance. And so we've been experimenting with this at Ocean Beach for the past, 6 or 7 years. And every year we kind of tweak our design of our evapotron a little bit, and every year it gets a little bit better. And so, but the website has several examples of how you build an evapotron. You can do it based on a pump. We use a pump to power the evapotron, and then of course it's powered by solar. Or you could actually have it wind powered. And so there's different ways to actually build these evapotrons, and I would encourage you to kind of have a look at these plans and try it and experiment with it. And it's actually not that hard to do, especially if you're excited about building something cool and building like a cool little contraption. It's fun to do. So that's for the evaporation piece. And so, as I mentioned, we've been trying to do this for a number of years, and it took a while for us to kind of get the hang of it, because we always ended up with too many evapotrons in the beginning and too little evapotrons at the end, and then we ended up with like an overload of gray water that we couldn't get rid of towards the end of the week. So we finally managed to actually get to a phase where we have plenty of capacity all the way through the end of the week, and so we bring home no gray water at all. So that's quite exciting. And then the last part, besides the evaporation, is also the filtration. Because one of the things that you don't want is you don't want dirty water to end up in the evapotron and start smelling. We had this experience. Some of you that may know Ocean Beach, we're kind of known for our lobster pizza. And so one year we dumped all the lobster juice in the evapotron. That was a horrible idea. And so we started and so we started thinking about, okay, how can we, first of all, not do this anymore? Like, of course, we store the lobster juice somewhere else. But the second thing is, how can we then filter the water so even other potential gray water doesn't start smelling? And so we built this whole filtration system. You can also find it on our website on how to do so. And so, so that's kind of the last piece, is like building the contraptions, the filters, the evaporators to try and evaporate gray water. So one of the things I want to do this year is I want to build what I call a perp shower, a perpetual shower, where the water basically gets recycled, so people can take a shower for like half an hour or an hour. It doesn't really matter, because the water just gets recycled and then gets dumped after the shower session is finished. So that's my project for this year, trying to see if I can build a perpetual shower. So anyway, so that's water. So again, it's not daunting at all. You can do a lot of education by having some simple rules in place, and the website gives you some ideas on how to put these things together. You can centralize some of the services, which will make it easier and will avoid people using kind of single-use containers and plastic. And then if you're more adventurous, you can start building contraptions like evaporators and filtration systems. But all of these resources are all available on that website. So you can look at those and you can figure out what you feel comfortable with. And as soon as our Discord server will go live, I'll definitely be very, very active in the water channel and love to kind of engage with people and discuss how we can improve things together. So that's water.
Great. Brady Cat, do we have any questions from the chat?
We have one question. Can you offer any examples of the size system to evaporate 5 gallons a day?
I think if you look at the Ocean Beach implementation that we did, we basically documented it on the website. So if you go to the website, you'll find all the details of how we did it. And it basically has a sizing associated with it. I think if I remember correctly, we have 3 evaporators. They're pretty tall. They're like 6 feet tall, each one of them. But they can each evaporate, I forgot how much, but like 40, 50 gallons a day. So a lot. So yeah, 5 gallons a day is not an issue at all. That's very easy to do.
I guess quick follow-up question. Is there a solar powered option to run the pump for the water container?
Yeah, I mean, our Ocean Beach is completely solar powered. So we have a container, and on top of the container, we have our solar grid. We have, I think, about 15 solar panels, and so the entire camp is solar powered, including the pumps for the evaporators. But so these pumps don't consume a huge amount of energy, so you could put like a very small kind of solar panel next to it, and these pumps only run. Anyways, these pumps only run during the day, right? Because at night, nothing evaporates. So it actually matches very nicely with the sunlight. So if you put like a very small solar panel next to your pump, that'll probably work. And it won't work in the evening, but then nothing evaporates anyways when the sun goes down.
Yeah, I raised my hand just because, Mark, because I think it would be awesome if, and this is just, again, getting back to how this resource that we have could be an evolving resource. I think it would be great if we could like even put that kind of question that I believe it was Kevin asked, just like how many gallons a day does this evaporate? Could this evaporate? And putting that in a chart so that way people can like, if that's a question that's coming up organically, that's like feedback for me on what we need to add to the website. So I think you and I can break out about that, but I think giving people that scale will really help them, just like we do with solar, with like kind of being able to help people size their solar systems.
Yeah, we actually had flow meters on every single evapotron, so we know exactly how much water went into the evapotron and how fast it was evaporating. So we have the data. I need to look it up exactly, and I can update the document online to make sure there's some sizing information in there.
Great, thank you, Sugar. Next up, we have Lee, who's going to be talking about shelter. Lee is here. Well, Lee has been since 2011. He has been experimenting with more efficient and scalable ways to set up camp at Burning Man. As the lead for Square One, he focuses on reducing waste and rework by designing infrastructure that evolves rather than being rebuilt each year. One key innovation has been modular shipping container sleeping units, which also serves as transport and storage, cutting down on labor and material waste. Over time, other camps, including Camp Mystic, Playa Alchemist, and Waffle House, have taken inspiration from these ideas. Lee's approach prioritizes practically over aesthetics, testing ideas on a small scale before scaling up. He focuses on long-term efficiency, allowing shelter to do more than just provide protection. It's also to prove how our camps function and interact. Thanks, Lee.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro. You can find the long version of what our camp is exactly doing on the GTCC website, but I want to bring a much shorter version and a general understanding of how we think about it, not necessarily what exactly we did. So something that I noticed that a lot of camps are doing is that they're thinking about shelter and perhaps other thing as well as something temporary, because we call it the temporary city, but it's not really temporary. It's a repeating city. And if it's repeating, you can make iterations and improve on your shelter each time. Now, this is something that obviously that most of you probably do, you build up. But if on, pun intended, if on square one you decide, here is my end goal, then you can make a 5-year plan knowing that you're going to come to camp multiple times and say, I'm going to do this, then this, then this, then that, and every year build on it instead of thinking about it as something temporary. Next slide. So most of the camps rebuild their kitchens and showers and sleeping units, and so that's how we used to do it at the beginning. We also bought a bunch of RVs, and I looked around and realized at some point, why do I have 25 RVs in camp? Which means I have 25 kitchens, 25 bathrooms, 25 microwaves, 25 stovetops. Like, we don't need this. Everybody can just be centralized. But if that's the case, where are they going to sleep? And we'll get to that later. But that, to me, RVs was the most wasteful part of Burning Man. Also, a lot of camps, they use their shelters as a shelter only. And when you leave Burning Man, you offload everything you have into a storage container or a storage place. And all that work adds up when you do it year after year after year. So what if you can make your transport and lodging the same item? And again, Burning Man is repetitive, not necessarily temporary. Next slide. So what we did in our camp is, after a few iteration, we decided to go with modular shipping containers. And at first we had semi-trailers, but then we realized no registration, no insurance. If you just put them on the ground, it's no longer a vehicle. So we ended up doing that. We currently have 16 40-foot shipping containers, and we lay them in a certain way to block prevailing winds and shield from the rains, which became very useful 2 years ago. And it was already mentioned that other camps took these blueprints and used them themselves. So in the next 4 slides, I'm going to show you some examples. Next slide shows our camp from above in about 2019, I think. And you can see how the containers are shielding the central area. Next slide. When we think about efficiency, you can do tiny little things to improve your shelter. And I'll show how this became a shelter idea as well. We took our bicycle truck, put a shelf on there, made 2x4 plywood frame shelves. And now we are loading it with 2 layers of bicycles. We figured if we're doing it with bicycles, why not do it with beds? So the container right next to it, you can see has a shelf that's also a bicycle container. But in the next slide, you can see the shelves that I'm talking about. Those slide into that containers, and we can load 2 layers of things. And on the next slide, you can see how we applied this to an insulated containers. We put R13, and then we created shelves as well. All the pictures on this page are the same container. So that thing that you see stacked inside the container is an art piece that was on Playa in the last few years. Once it's offloaded, all those shelves click in, a few screws for the stairs, and now that same container that transport things in and out of Burning Man is sleeping up to 16 people, which is a little tight, but usually 12. So next slide. To go a lot more in depth again, you can find the full slideshow on GTCC, or GTTC, Green Themed Camps, GTCC. But we don't expect all the camps to do this. This is also a very expensive approach that I had to borrow from some wealthy camp members in order to start off with. But I want to share some of the lessons that we had, and other camps can implement it to their camps however they see fit. A big mistake that I made on year one is that once we came up with this idea, we said, let's build 8 of them. And that was a horrible mistake because that year, which is the first time we used it on Playa, we realized we did so many things wrong. So iteration is key. Since it's a repetitive city, repetitive camp, start with an idea, learn from it, and implement it again. As far as people in your camp who are helping you, I found out along the way that if I just explain to people, here's the containers, here's how they work, here's what we did, it's not as efficient as telling them, here's why we did it. And then letting them do the iterations, whether it's on a container, on their RV, their tent, but let them fail. If they fail, they become a much better teacher, and the camp learns a lot better for it. Next slide. Sustainability is not black and white. I realized that there's so many trade-offs, and I can't think of currently one for shelter necessarily, but I'm going to use one that we have in the kitchen. We feed 1,000 people a day, and we go back and forth with, should we wash our dishes with a 3 bucket system, or should we use one-time compostable utensils? And when you grow the problem to 1,000, you start thinking, okay, so how much water are we now bringing in and out of Burning Man? How much do we need to evaporate? Even if we evaporate it, how much of the equipment do we need in order to make this all happen? And is it really that bad if we just buy 1,000 plates and then compost them? Like, so with each camp and size and different methods, it's not always clear what's greener. And our camp is such a large scale. We have 150 members and we feed 1,000 people a day, that things that seem to be really simple on paper and obvious turn out to be big mistakes that we still don't have answers to. But the key that I learned is along the way is that efficiency should guide the decisions more than aesthetics. Some people say, I have this grandiose idea. How can we make it most efficient? I like to think, what's the most efficient way of doing something? And now once I find that solution, what's the most grandiose version of that? Next slide, just to wrap it all up. Design for repetitivity when you go for your camp. And if you ask me specific questions, maybe I can come up with those. But right now, I can't really think of many of those. But it's key when you have a 5-year plan to say, okay, I'm going to do this next year, that next year, that next year, instead of saying, it's a temporary city, let's just do it once. Because ultimately, that's the most wasteful version. Test before you make big changes, efficiency over aesthetics, function over form, basically. Shelter, if you can afford to, and if you can think about it this way, and if the iterations can get you there, think of your shelter as your logistical equipment as well. The truck that brings things in and out of Burning Man, if you just put R6 insulation in there, could become sleeping quarters for a few people. If those people pool the funds together to bring that truck in and out of Burning Man, now your transport is free. And number 5, if you want your whole camp to learn and act this way, then let them make mistakes. Don't just preach it. Watch them fail. And that's it. Any questions?
Looks like we don't have any questions currently from the chat. Thank you so much, Lee.
I did share your YouTube, or the YouTube link to your full talk from one of the previous theme camp symposiums, though.
Thank you.
Managing power can be complicated to prepare for. Marcus, also known as Lex Lowell, is the sustainability infrastructure lead for Bao Chicka Bao Bao, where he spearheaded the transformation of the camp into the largest solar-powered food and camp playa. A passionate burner for 5 years, Marker is also a talented sculptor and has contributed artwork to the burn. Building a solar power expertise, he founded Go Grid Systems, a company offering rugged, portable, and powerful solar and battery products. Marcus also resonated with having camps to need energy to run interactive components or meet their camp's needs. Marcus?
Thanks for the intro. Yep,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Hold on, I'm going to share my screen. Just want to confirm you can see it.
We can see it.
Great. I'm Marcus DePaula. We're Next Level from Bow Chicka Wow Wow. We are about 90-person camp into year 11 at the Burn. We serve 4,000 steamed buns every year. Over 93 campers from over 7 countries. We have 2 art cars that are associated with our camp, and it'll be 3 next year. We also host a night market with a number of other food camps on Wednesday of Burn Week. And we do all this on solar power. This past year, we were completely, all our needs were on solar. We also launched the first public mutant vehicle, an EV charging station, again on solar. And we also supported the Temple Builders Guild camp and workshop in building the temple with the system that I designed for our camp. So we deployed 3 solar arrays at our camp. We had our core infrastructure array that was spread between 2 shipping containers. It was nice to hear a little bit about the use of shipping containers for shelter, but here's another usage for them as well, is using it as support structure for a solar array. And if you that eliminates the use of the need for a number of uprights, provides very stable anchoring, and put some solar panels over it, and you have shade. The second deployment was our charging station for EVs and MVs. You can see that here in the second photo. And then the third, we had a third array that was built.
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but I don't think the slide is showing your next slides. It's just showing the first one.
Hold on. Let me try sharing again. Thank you for saying that. Go into.
And I can do this for you, and you just tell me your next slide, okay?
Okay. All right, you're on there. Okay.
Oh, it's not like that. Oh, but I can't. I can only go like this. So you're at solar
Okay.
deployments?
Yeah, solar deployments. Great. So across all these deployments, we had 86 solar panels this past year, with 35,000 watts of peak production capacity. We had broken down into a number of microgrids, and the total inverter output capacity was about 35,000 watts as well. We had 107 kilowatt hours of battery storage. And we had those in modular boxes that we could roll around depending on the needs of the camp, just as we were still figuring out all the loads. Let's go to, the next slide here. So in trying to design, we did this in an iterative fashion. So we had a much smaller system the first year we decided to do this. And we wanted these principles of not requiring any tools to assemble, only needing a few people to put it together, being able to put together with mostly off-the-shelf components, utilizing solar as shade, having it be something that could be modular and scalable, and the 2 to 3 year payback period, and as well as producing data to guide our improvements for the future. So the next slide here will show this is the form factor that we came up with. So using road cases that are off the shelf in the production and touring industry, and rack mount batteries, in upgrading the wheels that came with these touring cases for more of a rugged outdoor environment. These are modules of 100 amp hour, 300 amp hour batteries, about 15,000 watt hours per box here. and this is about 300 pounds of weight as well. So it's, while it sounds like a lot, it's still manageable to push around, and for a couple people to lift in and out of trucks, things like that. Next slide. The inverters also mount into road cases with plugs on the side. So the wiring the whole system is very quick. These can take quite a beating as well. Everything's meant for long-term durable use. The batteries can be moved around, plugged into the different inverters, and pretty simple wiring as well. So nobody really needs advanced electrical knowledge to put together the system. Next slide. The solar array is all just made out of aluminum 2-inch pipe that we bought in bulk. And this could be put together with 2 people. I used rapid clamps that are also used in the touring and staging industry. And they don't require any tools to tighten, not even a wrench. It's all just like wing nuts, and it's just rapid clamping systems. Yeah, the bars spread between the 2 containers, handful of uprights down the center, and the panels rest right on top and clamp using those staging clamps. Next slide. So here's some photos how we put this together. Additionally, this is expandable, front and back, side to side. I actually kept the tops of the shipping containers free because our camp likes to sit up on top of them. But it's easily expandable if you needed more panels. But we found that this number of panels was plenty to run induction burners. We have a 900-pound per day ice machine that runs on this. All our central lighting, sound system. So this is more than enough to power a 100-person camp. All in all, yeah, this sets up in under an hour and a half. This is the shade structure array. I'm seeing also some questions around cleaning the dust. We had a leaf blower, and so we just plug it in, give it a quick burst every day. Just didn't take too long. As far as how it held up against winds, quite well. The wind, since they're pretty horizontal, cuts right through, so they're really not catching the wind. The poles themselves have feet that that bolt right into the ground to prevent uplift as well. Next. So here's this is our laundry list, part of our laundry list of what we powered. As far as cooling, we had a large communal cooling tent that we had just one of these evaporative coolers. And this evaporative cooler only took about 500 watts of power, which was almost nothing, and was able to keep the pretty large space at about 68 degrees, which is just absolutely incredible. And as far as evaporating water, they do go through a lot of water, about on max like 30 gallons a day. So this year, what we're trying to do is implement a filter system so we can take our gray water from showers and our sinks, filter it, sterilize it, and then use it in evaporative coolers. So that way we can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Next. So here's an example of one of the electrical mutant vehicles that we charged. Within a few minutes of finishing our solar array, these guys pulled up, needed a jump, so I was able to just roll a battery pack over to them and charged their batteries and got them going. Next. So we actually wanted to be able to charge one of our mutant vehicles in 3-phase. And so we were able to do that. 3 6,000 watt inverters, each one would provide a phase of power. all these inverters just use a COM cable connected between them, a little Ethernet cable, and then they can distribute the phases accordingly. And it's super easy to set up and very cost effective. Each one of these inverters is just the inverter itself is about $1,000, and then we'd spend about another $1,000 in the case and all the electrical wiring and things like that to get it going. Next slide. And I do see one of the questions here around payback on the system in 2 to 3 years. Yeah, so we would compare it to what we would spend on a generator and fuel. And so yes, this was part of camp dues. And the batteries themselves come with a factory warranty of 15 years. It's the same with the inverters. And so there's quite a bit of longevity on this equipment. These things are meant to be in pretty strenuous conditions, and the panels themselves, these are all residential grade panels that are rated for hail and high winds. And even though our batteries, we use them here and there throughout the year for other events, but they are able to also sit idle and not require any sort of maintenance as well. So the new chemistry in the last couple of years, the lithium iron phosphate batteries are really low maintenance, no maintenance, pretty cost effective. Price of batteries has fallen more than 50% in the last 2 years. And it's continuing to fall. Let's see. Yeah. You can keep going. Yeah. So these are some close up on the components of our system. These are the clamps that I use to hold all the piping together. Road cases or inverters. And we have everything communicate with Home Assistant to be able to share data on consumption. So down to the appliance level, use a smart plug. And the inverters themselves also have built-in data logging and can export to Home Assistant as well. And so we're able to capture data on everything both at a macro and a micro level to understand how much we're using, if something is spiking, if something's using more than we anticipated. Yeah. So this might be helpful for folks. I sort of also broke it down just to have some better back of the napkin data for people to figure out how to size their system. So we used about 650 watt hours daily per camper, and we needed almost about half, a little more than half of that of battery storage. We needed a minimum of 30 panels to meet our daily consumption of 60 kilowatt hours of power. We were getting about between 85 and 66% efficiency of the sticker label of the panels. And just depended on if it was a super dusty day or not. If we blew the panels off, then we would get closer to that 85%. And this is, again, for the most part, they're at horizontal angling. Next year, we'll probably combine from the 3 grids into the 2 grids. And this is, and we're also going to try to take, we are taking this to the next level by making this into kits, doing some pre-build components, and offering this to other camps as well. So if you're a camp and you're interested in building a grid of this size, please reach out. Take a look at the site I put together, Go Grid Systems, which just has these modular components for purchase straight away if you wanted. But I'm also happy to talk to you guys on how to build these yourselves if you want. Please reach out if you have any questions. Happy to help. And let me know if there's some other questions here.
Hey, Marcus, it looks like we're getting short on time, so Brady Cat's going to
Okay.
go ahead and share your info in the chat, and then we'll go ahead
Okay.
and move on to our next person. And last but not least, we have David to guide us through the resources available for camp attempting to improve their environmental footprint via transporting people and things. Burner since 2009, theme camp lead of Naked Heart since 2013. Naked Heart is devoted to prototyping new ways for humans to interrelate. David has been pursuing carbon neutrality for Naked Heart since 2022. Naked Heart is a known on Playa for its unique solutions to common problems for large camps by pioneering appropriate technology and robust self-correcting solutions. David?
Well, thank you, Fox and Papercut, for inviting me to this panel. This is important work we're doing here today. I am David Braun, and I am the camp lead for Naked Heart. And could we get that first slide? Perfect. So Naked Heart this year is going to be 400 people, and we have been carbon neutral since 2023. My intention today is to speak about the role that transportation plays in achieving carbon neutrality. And I'll be talking about concrete things that camps of any size can do. I will also be addressing the importance of leadership in creating these shifts. And thank you already for that slide. So what you're seeing here is from the initial presentation that Burning Man made about their carbon emissions. The YouTube URL there is where you can find that. And if you look at that little cream colored wedge, that's all the on-site emissions. And half of those emissions are for theme camps, and half of them are from the org, like Burning the Man and running DPW and all that kind of stuff. The biggest part, 90% of it, is travel and transportation. That's plane flights, car trips, OSS deliveries, anything. All that accounts for 90%. I was floored when I saw that, and also incredibly hopeful. Next slide. Because transportation really is the low-hanging fruit here. Anything you do to cut transportation is 9 times more effective than your on-playa loads. For example, if just 20% of your campers cut their transportation carbon in half, you could save more carbon than converting to a full solar system. In fact, more carbon than every other thing you do on camp. And transportation solutions are almost entirely cultural shifts as opposed to expensive infrastructure shifts. How a camp makes infrastructure decisions directly affects the transportation decisions of individual campers. Every member of your camp can be equally empowered to help with this project. Transportation reductions are a textbook example of communal effort. The sustainability lead is a critical player here, and I'll be discussing the stance and the actions that an effective sustainability leader must take to have real-world results. Next slide. Oops, there we go. So the major factors for reducing transportation emissions are reducing the number of trips and making each of the remaining trips much more efficient. For the trips that can't be reduced further, find ways to offset them. There's nothing that camp leadership can do to accomplish this themselves. They must lead their members into new consciousness around their actions. Next slide. So let's talk about communal effort. I'll spotlight what my particular camp, Naked Heart, does as an example. So we polled our members and determined all the things that are easy to do communally, but hard to do individually. This led to the list of things that we provide as a camp. So we provide all water, there's water for showers, water for eating, drinking, all food, all shade. We have shade for tents and shade for communal spaces, all workshop spaces, and importantly, all bicycles. Each of these items, when handled as a camp level, reduces the bulky, heavy things that campers must bring to the playa. Next slide. The result is that 80% of our campers can arrive on playa with just 2 suitcases. What this means on a grand scale is that we have 70% Burner Express bus ridership. The only people who bring cars are our build crew because the Burner Express bus isn't running yet. And even that crew is massively carpooling. The thing that makes that possible is how light everyone packs. And it's our infrastructure decisions as a camp that allows them to imagine fitting everything into 2 suitcases. Having just 2 suitcases makes it possible to carpool with 4 people in a vehicle. Now, originally, we made our decisions not about carbon footprint at all, but because we wanted to devote more real estate to interactivity and less to a parking lot. Next slide. So infrastructure decisions can have a huge impact. We've calculated just by getting our Bay Area campers out of their cars and into the Burner Express that we have cut our transportation emissions by 20%. That is equal to our entire on-playa carbon footprint. These savings happened organically through judicious infrastructure choices, which leads to a very interesting paradox. Next slide. Having a set of camp bicycles can save more carbon than a solar power system. If the reason people are not carpooling is because they can't transport bicycles, you have a tremendous resource to tap. It's far easier and cheaper to deploy bicycles than a solar solution. Next slide. I'll be talking a bit more about offsets in a later slide, but in Naked Heart, we ask our campers on their registration form whether they will be purchasing carbon offsets for their air travel. 80% choose to do so. This is often done at time of purchase through Travelocity or Orbit, but can also be done after purchase through organizations like TerraPass. If we have campers who choose to not offset, the camp actually picks up the tab and pays from our budget. Next slide. So thank you for hearing a little bit about how we do things at Naked Heart. Of course, you'll all be doing something different, but I want to bring your attention to the resource we've talked about before, which is the Green Theme Camp Community Toolkit. And we'll talk about the resources available there. Next slide. So in the toolkit for transportation, you'll see the following subcategories: people transport, gear transport, and then educate and offset. And I'll address each of those individually. Next slide. Moving people is the greatest impact in the transportation sector. It is also the easiest to shift. The first step is calculating your current emissions. There's a tool for that in the toolkit. From this inventory that you compile, some easy solutions may shine into visibility. Other solutions might emerge from your campmates once you bring your inventory to their awareness. Remember, even seemingly small shifts have a huge impact. Just to reiterate, these are all things that any camp of any size can do. Cultural shifts are free. They just require impassioned leadership. The best leadership often comes from appropriate solutions that are unique to your own camp's circumstances. The most important piece of the puzzle is a strong lead. Next slide. There are some physical things that a camp can do to accelerate cultural changes. Anything the camp can do to reduce the amount of stuff that a camper needs to bring will facilitate carpooling. When most of your campmates come from a similar geographical center, the better the carpooling opportunities. When camp leadership makes carpooling a community value, people natively and naturally want to help. When leadership provides an excellent and usable ride-sharing board, it makes it easier to do the right thing. Next slide. Next slide. Here's an example of the ride-share board that we use in Naked Heart. It is fundamentally different than the one shown in the toolkit, and I think it's vastly superior. Let me walk you through it. First off, we publish a link to a Google form in our newsletters. This form collects information and outputs it to this spreadsheet. The form collects information not just about ride sharing, but also vehicle passes. These two are linked. You don't know your vehicle pass needs until you know your driving needs. We're an international camp, so we have a lot of members driving from all parts of the US. The most important information here is the city that someone is driving from. The second most important information is their arrival date. Most of the members that we have driving are arriving Monday through Friday of build week. 50% of our carpooling is picking up people from the airport in Reno and bringing them to the playa during build week. This will be different for your camp. The spreadsheet is then shared. Anyone with a link can edit it. That allows people to indicate that their car is full or to show a change in plans. Once we get to August 1st, I will share this spreadsheet with all the other camps in our hub and many other adjacent camps to ours for a total of maybe 1,000 people. If we have a lot of extra vehicle passes, I'll even share the spreadsheet in Burning Man face groups to make the passes go away. Next slide. One of the biggest reasons that people arrive in single occupancy vehicles is because the rest of the vehicle is filled with gear. When a camp takes care of the gear, we can maximize carpooling opportunities. So how does a camp get its gear to the playa? I highly recommend storing your gear in Nevada. Most people imagine a storage unit in Fernley or Empire or something. That can certainly work, and I've done that in the past. The problem then becomes needing to double load gear. You load it into a truck to get it off playa, then you unload it at the storage unit, rinse and repeat next year. You probably also need to rent a box truck. It is more efficient and probably cheaper to have all your gear in a container. Most of you know about the BRC container program, but there are also private services like Moopless that delivers 28-foot semi-trailers. Another option for promoting carpool is city-specific container programs. These are cooperatives of burners that have pooled resources to hire an entire semi-trailer to take their black bins from their hometown to the playa. They then rendezvous with the trailer on playa and collect their stuff. Currently, there are container programs for New York City, Washington, D.C., Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Atlanta, Austin. I'm working with some key players to create a how-to document for initializing your own container program. It'll probably be posted to the toolkit when complete. Next slide. Remember when I said that most of these solutions are cultural? They are the combined effort of individuals choosing to make different decisions. The first leadership action you can take is education. Inform campers of your carbon neutral impacts. Ask each camper to assess what they can do to save 30%. Write up some information about how they can buy offsets for any impacts they can't retire, such as air travel. Most importantly, make it fun. If we can gamify our actions, there's a chance that campers will retain these behavior changes in the default world. We are creating a new culture, and that's what makes Burning Man so exciting. Invite your campers to give feedback on the shifts that they are making so that you can update your inventory. People want to see that their actions, and especially their sacrifices, are moving your camp towards your goals. Next slide. So air travel offsets. This is a big one. I don't know that I fully trust how green some of these offsets are, but we can fine tune that as time goes by, but they are available. So air travel is a big bugaboo, especially for my camp. We are international and 20% of our members fly from a different continent. 30% fly from across the country. Air travel is not addressable through carpooling. What you can do is offset your carbon. With companies like Travelocity and Orbitz, there's a screen when you buy your tickets that allows you to pay for offsets. Typically costs between 10 or 30 bucks. Now, if you buy your tickets direct from the airline or you're using air miles or something, you can buy your offsets later through places like TerraPass. Last year, in our camp, we decided to experiment with some in-house offsets. The first one we called foregone trips. If a member was planning to take an air travel trip somewhere and decided in the spirit of an offset to not take that trip, to maybe take a train or attend virtually, we allowed them to apply that foregone trip to their offset. Basically, they were saying, Burning Man is so important to me that I will sacrifice this other trip instead. One member even decided to not go to a wedding in order to spend her personal carbon budget to go to Burning Man. We also have an offset bank. Some of our people travel for work. They have no choice in the air trips that they take. Some people take 20 trips per year. They choose to pay for offsets on all 20 trips and give that offset credit to our camp. Use your imagination. We're just getting started on reimagining how we can consciously expand our carbon budgets. Next slide. The Burner Express bus is a very important part of the carbon puzzle for my camp. 70% of our members use it. Functionally, it is how our air travelers get from the airport to the playa. It is much cheaper than renting a car for 9 days. If you are traveling from San Francisco, the carbon load is 25% of what you would expend even if you were carpooling with 4 people in a car. It is much easier for a camper to imagine using the Burner Express bus if they have very little gear. Remember those 2 suitcases? That is where your camp decisions come in. A new addition to the org that the org is considering this year is to have Burner Express bus available for Friday entry. Riders would still need a service access pass, but would allow you to get a bunch of more builders in without cars. Next slide. Now again, our situation at Naked Heart is very different from almost any other camper village. Our solutions will not be your solutions. What is absolutely certain is that you have resources in your camp that we can only dream of. Use those. What I do want to leave you with is a sense that all of this is possible. The tools that are most useful are not engineering tools, they are insight and leadership. Start by thinking outside the box. Take stock of your strengths and create your solutions. The solutions that are most impactful lie in the fundamental questions of how you camp and your expectations for your members. To make this work, you must lead, and to do that, you must have a vision that you're leading from. If you do not already have a sustainability lead, appoint one. Have them review the recording of this campfire talk, show them the toolkit, empower them to create art by reducing carbon. Next slide. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me ramble on. If you have any further questions, I'm available via email. I've also listed the sustainability statements of our old village and our 2 main camps. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat and moderators will ask you to ask them publicly in the forum. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, David. Actually, we've run out some time here, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But everybody, if you have any questions or comments about this talk, we want to know. So please fill out the feedback form. This link is found in the chat with Brady Cat there. Also, be sure to register for the Camp Symposium. It's Saturday, March 22nd from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time. And then save your date for the next campfire talk on April 15th about kids at Burning Man. Everyone, please feel free to unmute and say goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Green your
you.
burn.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.